Yo, what's up guys? Coming to you guys with another project breakdown. None other than Nadem in the house. So today I'm going to review Golden Freeza. I'm going to show you the methods I use to create the sounds, the project overview. Let's jump right into it. So this is the FLP for Golden Freeza. Just before I rendered individual stems, I did a stem mix down after I was happy with this project. Let's first start with the drums so you can hear the drums in the beginning. We'll bring up our mixer so we have the kick, clap, there's a loop, crash, fills, fill before the drop, bunch of miscellaneous stuff. There's also a top layer for the kick, so let's hear the percussion only. Sometimes I've been doing this lately in a few projects, and sometimes if you layer a little transient, whether it be a little hi-hat or something, like you can experiment. You can put a percussion, you can put like a cymbal of some sort, and it can really make your kick hit harder. You're gonna have to be smart with it. You're gonna have to EQ it, maybe adjust the levels of it. You know, don't just slap on everything and make your kick huge, because then there's no space for other things in the mix. But if we play the kick without the kick top, this is the kick top. The kick top was actually just part of a cymbal loop, part of the existing loop that I use here. But I found a part that really sounded nice. And when that's combined with the kick, you get this effect. Let's show you what's going on with the kick. So similar to the Migos remix, there is a passive EQ sound goodizer for some pumping. I'm using Native Instruments Transient Master, which is a great plugin, very underrated, zero latency. If you need to add some punchiness to boost the transient, you can pump up the attack. So let's see what the kick sounds like dry, and then we'll add effects to it. So let's solo the kick. So you can see there, we're EQing it, pumping it. The transient master might be a bit too harsh, you know, like going to this with a fresh set of ears might be like, whoa, why is it like so punchy? But, you know, that was what was done at the time. And Sausage Fattener made it pump a bit more, but what I did afterwards was reduce the gain. And I used the Oxford Inflator, which is also another zero latency plugin, which Oxford Inflator works to really saturate your sounds and to make them glue better. If you're trying to really pump up the dynamics and give some pumping, check out Oxford Inflator. It's been around for years, and it's used by guys like Headhunters, Lazy Rich. Let's move on to the clap. So with equality, we are high passing it, boosting it. I tend to really like these type of curves, a basic high pass. I don't go beyond 24 dB in most cases because I don't want to remove all of the power around here. If you high pass your snare too much, you risk losing that punchiness in the lower frequency. Supercharger GT, as you guys have seen, I use this a lot. I have it on the Slam preset. Sound Goodizer, not that much sound goodizer on there. Equality, again, I'm boosting some frequency content around 4K and the really high end, the air, just around 11K. Pro C2. Just to really kind of tame the transients a bit, just to glue it together a bit more. And last but not least, the Fruity Reverb. Now, Fruity Reverb 1 is a great plugin. It's a gem. It's a legacy plugin, so it's not updated for 64-bit. With Fruity Reverb, it's cool because all the controls are right there in a single window. I like that you have a dry and wet knob separate, so you can still have a 100% dry signal and route to the wet. So it gives you an edge. It gives you a different approach to reverb. It's not the best reverb, but if you need a basic reverb, just a basic wetness, I find that to percussion, it can sometimes add a lot more space, and we can hear that. Moving on, we have just basic stuff, the cymbal loop, crash. There's nothing, you know, crazy going on there. Yeah, let's play the rest of the track so I can show you what's going on with other components. In this project, things are grouped, so if you see I have most of my percussion up here, I have then going down my bass, different vocals, Freeza vocals, and then as we scroll down, it kind of slowly goes into effects. And you can see here at the bottom, a lot of these were bounced effects from different instruments to really add atmosphere. I was really needing to fill in the space, and I think we should just solo all our effects so I can show you. You know, this is a very effect heavy project, and this might give you an idea of like when it is a good idea to add effects, because sometimes with projects you don't need much effects. If you guys watched my Migos remix, I didn't use a lot of effects, but this is, you know, the complete opposite. So let's take a listen. So the whole idea behind that was that I think I got inspired when I heard one of these sounds, these like laser riser or something. But nonetheless, it got me thinking, whoa, I wanna make it like Frieza's coming out of the fucking spaceship. You know, like it's just boom, like he's getting inspired, he's getting out of there. There's that whole laser like space kind of ambient atmosphere. And with any of your tracks, you want to tell a story. So if the pads and effects you use do contribute to the song in a genuine way, don't feel bad if you want to use a lot of effects. You just have to EQ them and balance them. I find that balance is everything. A lot of these effects are fit in the mix intelligently because they're either EQ'd heavily or they're very, very quiet, just enough so that the listener can hear what's going on and they can hear the different panning and the different elements, but not taking away from what's integral to the center of the mix, which is, of course, our drop. Moving on to the second part, the break. So you can see there were a lot of cool stuff I did. You know, this was from Dragon Ball. This Dragon Ball Z head crack. Frieza was like cracking his neck. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. Why not take that and be like, bam, you know, like, and play it right there. So you always want to try different stuff. This is also sampled. This that says explosion effect. There was a part where he was powering up, and I was like, you know what? Let me EQ this. Let me automate the volume and make it into a riser. And it was just a scene, like it was a straight up scene. I call this DBZ effects on my mixer, And let's hear this. You know, and it's on its own, it kind of sounds not great, you know, but with all the other components, when we introduce everything, effects are definitely a tool, and they can be used improperly, they can be used great. So experiment, try different things, and if you're concerned about sampling for legality reasons and whatnot, I'd say that just you want to disguise your effects. So something like that, mixing it into the mix, putting it as not something that's directly in the center of the mix. Instead, try out something else. But of course, if you manipulate it, you're creative with it, or you do resynthesis, granular stuff, then that's fine too. You know, it just depends on what you're doing with the sound. There's just infinite possibilities. So let's move on to the another important part, which is the buildup. So the buildup, I referenced a Bassjackers song. That's why I have this part up here called reference. And it wasn't the same harmonic key, but the reason why I referenced it was I wanted to see what were they doing. And I noticed that they were low passing their snare drums, adding more reverb and EQing them as it build up. And they also did volume automation, which is something I'll cover in a new video, where you can reduce the volume of your song such that when the drop hits, you know, it's as powerful as possible. So I think that references are key. You don't want to copy the guy's song, but you want to see, why is he doing that? You know, why is he EQing it? Why is he dropping at 130 instead of 125, you know? So if we go to my build-up snare, few things are going on. There might be a bit more, but things that we can immediately notice is that it's getting high passed. I'm introducing kickstart to kind of like let the listener know, whoa, groove is coming in, sidechain is coming in, some shit's gonna go down, you know, Freeza's coming out of the fucking toilet. Doing that by doing kickstart, introducing it, you know, pulling up the knob slightly. We are high passing it, we're increasing the gain so it's not as loud as it gets near the end. So a lot of stuff that you can do, including panning techniques to introduce some tension. It's all about tension. And tension is really great to build up, you know, and let the listener know a drop is about to come, as opposed to just dropping the song right away. Let's take a look at our bass, because I think a lot of people are interested in the bass, what's going on with the bass. So the bass is just being routed to the bass send on channel 8. And then it's being routed to bass mix, which finally goes to the master. Let's solo these two to hear. So let's turn off all the effects. We will see the difference as we introduce all the effects, and what we'll do is show you how they were made in Massive. Some couple tips I would recommend. So let's play it back. So there's a few different bass patterns. There is the first one that you hear here. Acid Laser V15. You know, I've made so many revisions of this. I love making different versions of my bass and then to quickly A/B them, compare them. So let's play this one. There's a lot going on here, and you know, it would take too much time to explain it. All I can really summarize this is just I was fucking around and just experimenting. So experiment, and remember that the phase modulator in Massive is a powerhouse, is a king. You want to always experiment with the phase modulator. and try different values, but usually values around like 30 to 50 give you some really cool results depending on which oscillator you throw it on. Not only that, but mess around with pitch envelopes. Massive has so much power in its pitch envelopes and its modulation oscillator, and also messing around with this, putting it at like 7, you know, the harmonic 7th, or a pitch above, a pitch below. As you tweak your settings, fiddle around with like one octave up, one octave below, and try it out. You know, try out different things in Massive. I find that with Massive, it's the small things that really all add up to give you a huge sound. It's not like, oh, I pressed this knob and we're good to go. It's the finer tweaks that you do. And with the bass, I was also tweaking this, the oscillator phases, the time as well. I make sure that the bass doesn't, you know, go from E to F right on the dot. There's a tiny bit of slur, a tiny bit of portamento. And in this case, the volume envelope of the bass, you know, had some trail too. It wasn't a no release type of bass, so there was some release there. I was also using the dimension expander. Dimension expander will help to make your mono sound a bit wider. This is the second bass, just a slight derivative of like the existing one. And what we're doing to the bass in the drop of the song is we are messing around with the routing. I'm going to turn off the reverb so you can better hear it. And what's going on is that when the routing is being adjusted like that, that's why you're hearing these grimy sounds. So the routing is what's doing this. It's basically taking it from that more low pass signal to a all pass signal, which is then giving it that griminess, and it sounds like it's opening up. And to many, they might think, whoa, like, is it being manipulated? Is it a different sound? No, we're just sending our signal chain from filter 1 to filter 2, and that's being done to many of these. I was also playing around with the reverb a lot. Kashmir also talks about how you can, you know, automate the reverb to create tension until the next segment of your song, and you can see that here. And I liked the sound that I got from it. Again, it's not typical, and a lot of people are gonna hate me. Yo, Ali and Nadem, why are you putting reverb on the bass? And my message is like, fuck off. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want. Do whatever you want to the bass. If you want to slap on 10 reverbs on it, go ahead, slap on 10 reverbs on it. It's all about doing something that hasn't been done before and creating a genuine story. Because if you sound identical to another artist, I mean, then you're not being you. So be you, do your own thing, just be, and yeah, don't let people discourage you, whatever type of music you're making, whether it be EDM, whether it be trap music, whether it be Nickelback, God forbid. So that kind of sheds some light on the bass. There is also some cool stuff going on with the break bass. It kind of sounds like a guitar. So I'm gonna see here, we covered the effects, we talked about the drums, and I really liked this cymbal loop. I'm using that because if we turn off the cymbal loop, the only thing I would probably change is that stupid angry vocal. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Oi! Just a guy yelling, and then I'm like, what? So let's turn off effects. And we just took a specific clip, because my whole notion was that he was pissed, he's angry, and you know, Freeza demonstrates a lot of anger and a lot of hatred, so, which is kind of contrary to the break. It's kind of like uplifting and not really like an ominous type of break, but it still worked out. Everything kind of worked out still. So let's go to the break. Now, because this was a YouTube clip, I had to process this, not a whole lot, but I didn't want to have rumble from like the scene, so I high passed Freeza's voice 120, boosted it slightly, cut it off at 20 kilohertz. Again, we have the good old supercharger GT. Got the slam preset, fat, and we have guitar rig. Guitar rig is such an amazing tool from Native Instruments. You have a built-in limit option there. So you have a built-in limiter, you have a built-in gate. When you guys fire up guitar rig, keep in mind that you want to make sure you turn on your right channel, because by default when people route things into a cabinet, a guitar amp, they're doing mono only, they're doing one channel. So if you're wondering, well, why is my sound not wide anymore? Make sure that these are both on, because when you fire up guitar rig, it only comes up like that. So here we have one of my favorite delays, the quad delay. We have then the solid bus compressor and little reflector. Reflector is a great plugin. It's also a separate plugin. The result here was just to glue it together a tad. Quad delay was adding some space. I was using guitar rig delay. Later in the mix, it was being automated. So we have the back verb for Freeza as well. And like I said in my previous tutorial, if you want to check out how I make these back verbs, it's most of the time done in Valhalla reverb, vintage verb. And we can hear it here. That's cool. So gives you an idea. Now let's show you what's going on with the break. So the break, this is like a very basic saw, and I was writing this kind of just on the fly, just experimenting. Now I didn't roll with the second part, I only rolled with the first 4 bars. But the key thing is, one thing I learned from Kashmir is that you want to make sure that from beginning to end, when your melody comes back to the beginning, that it resolves. It feels like it's been resolved. Because otherwise it feels unfulfilling, it feels anticlimactic. And you can notice that when it comes back, it makes sure that it can start and finish smoothly. Now the bass notes just follow the same notes, I believe. And the bass, we have massive. I actually made this by accident. I had no notion, no intention of making a bass guitar. But I took one of my patches, I was playing around with the low pass and I was playing around with this Daft. Daft is a really nice, a much brighter low pass filter. When you play around with the resonance, you can create a lot of thickness and a lot of air. There's not a whole lot of automation going on with this break bass, but it's just a matter of, you know, it melded well, sounded good. I also have a pluck playing over this. I believe the pluck is in silent 1. So we have a few layers. We have this little saw here, saw lead to the pluck. We have the break bass. We have the saw lead. And generally speaking, I have a lot of noise. You know, I talk about this. The noise is basically playing throughout the whole project, but is being low passed. So when we don't want to hear it, it's either at, you know, complete low pass where it's barely inaudible, or it's either hitting on the drop and you can visually see that, you know, where it's playing, how I'm using it. So take a good look at my noise, because I use it not only for rising effects but for impacts. And let's see how that all plays together.
この私が真のゴールデンフリーザ。
In this song, I'm also using Fruity Balance again. I talked about this in the previous video. And Fruity Balance I'm using here because, you know, I noticed that Bassjackers did this. Bassjackers had a 2-bar delay. They then teased a bit of their ARP, their melody. They played it back another 8 bars. And then what they did was they played it back with some drums. And then they did a really long build-up. So this is the type of song that would drop at, yeah, about 1 minute. It's just because my project is delayed there. But about 1 minute. So the drop would be at 1 minute. But ultimately, the structure of your song just depends on the vibe. How much do you want to build up that tension? Is the tension that you're building up? Because, like, let's say it builds up for 32 bars and the drop is just a freaking ice cream cone in your face. Like, I mean, is it worth building up 32 bars? The more you focus on the build-up, the more the drop has to trump it. And that's why I generally work on drops first. The way I worked on this song was I worked on the drop first, then I moved on to the break. Then when I was happy with what I was doing with the break, I took those components and filled in before, and I finished the outro and the intro. So kind of similar to Mike Williams, you know, like I don't do it like A, B, C, D, you know, I go in the middle and then I kind of fill in the gaps and just do what works with you because everybody is different. Everybody has a different story. There's really not a lot I can explain with the effects. You guys want to go through different effect libraries, whether it be Vengeance or Loop Masters or Cymatics or whomever you enjoy the sounds from. But this was a combination of both effects that were from sample libraries, like these sweeps. Some of these are the Kashmir sweeps. But also some of them were from instruments. If you find different instruments, whether it be Nexus, Omnisphere, and you're happy with some of the effects that you're hearing, go ahead and bounce them. I use Edison. I bounce them in Edison. I slap them in to make the project less intensive because I'm using a 32-bit FL Studio. So we're capped around 4 gigs. And I like that cap. I like the limitations because it forces me to be smarter about my decisions because I'm more limited, if that makes sense. Because then I can't just hoard 50 fucking instruments on one bass. I have to do what I can. And that's what I do. That's a great quote from Deadmau5. You want to make sure you do as much as you can with the instrument that you have. Now, not that it's wrong to heavily effect it, because you can see I have tons of effects on, like the bass, for instance. There's a lot. And some of these, you know, are they really necessary? Do you really need them at the end of the day? Maybe not. But you want to be happy with the sound coming into the effect chain, because if it's all just effects, it's kind of going to fuck with your workflow. You won't get the best bang for your buck out of the instrument, because a lot of these instruments, in particular like Omnisphere, Nexus, they have a lot of power in their mixing and EQ capabilities. Even their reverb, their delays are fantastic. We talked about the percussion, we talked about the Golden Freeza stuff, we talked about the back verbs, the bass. There's some other percussive elements like this anvil here. Yeah, honestly, there's not a lot to further talk about. It's just a lot of individual components that added up to everything. Now let me show you how the mixer looks like. So the mixer, we have, you know, all our percussion grouped in purple. We have the bass mix, this angry vocal, the noise. We have the break lead, break clap, break bass, break organ, break string, break anvil, again, break sub riser. We'll look at that. I think that's the big sub riser that you hear with the snares building into the first and the second drop. Just another group for vocals, one-shot vocals, Golden Freeza, and the rest is all just our effects. Now, with my effects, you can see that a lot of them get high-passed heavily. This one didn't. You know, this one just had some high boost. This one was being high passed. So ultimately, you know, it's not like I'm routing all my effects through one individual thing. I'm tailoring them and cutting out space individually. And sometimes I'll do that, and also in the very end maybe route it through like a quick 120 hertz high pass, just in case like something cut through the mix or cut through the effects. So the rest is all just effects and the miscellaneous effects that I sampled from Dragon Ball. The intro that you hear is from FabFilter Twin 2, and it is just a preset. Found that it was very spacey and future and like new age, so I liked that. So we will finally just wrap it up showing you the sub riser and the pads. So let's see, we have a few pads in here. I guess the drop doesn't have many pads. It looks like most of the pads are just in the breaks and the buildups. And most of my pads I go to plugins like RFX Nexus, Spectrasonics, Omnisphere. There's just so much that you can do for pads. So pads, just go through big libraries. I feel like making pads can sometimes be redundant just because they're so atmospheric and they're so readily available. So go through different presets and instruments before you try to create your own. If you want to create your own, then have a narrative behind it. Make it genuine, definitely. Here on the master chain, I was just working with FabFilter Pro L. I have it on -6 dB for the tutorial's sake, or -5 dB. But I usually work with no dither, no oversampling, a 0 dB ceiling, and maybe +1 or +2 gain, or sometimes no gain. And then I will do all the extra mastering and like a new limiter. I'll turn off the limiter, render the stems, and then I'll do a fresh project with everything grouped together, which I will show you that as well. Last but not least, let's talk about the sub riser. Just like the snare, the break snare, the build-up snare, I'm automating kickstart. It's bringing up that side chain to let you know, whoa, some groove is coming in. FabFilter Simplon, it is introducing a low pass and letting it kind of breathe and come out of the low pass. And then we have some reverb that we're using there to just make it more of an effect. Now let's take a look at the sub riser. And sub riser is very similar to the one that I used in the Migos bootleg. I just experimented with different waveforms. In this case, it's just something really stupidly simple, you know, just random waveforms with a low pass filter that's being automated, again with the sync off. And what's being done here is we're routing macro 1 to the high pass, we're routing macro 2 to the LFO and the drive. Macro 1 is also going to the wavetable shape and the noise. And not only that, but also it's increasing it by 2 full octaves. You know, if it starts at G4, it'll finish at G6. Like a G6, like a G6. Thumbs up if you hated that song. Dude, that song was fucking... And that was made by Kashmir.
Really?
By the way, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. If you guys didn't know. Anyways, guys, automation, experimentation is key. I didn't start this track out like being like, whoa, this is gold and Freeza. No, it wasn't like that. I was working on a drop. It was getting really grimy and evil, and then one thing led to another. So take a good look. If you guys want to take a final look at how I have things grouped. I know when it's very small like this, it's kind of a pain, but we'll increase the size and show you again. So from top to bottom, we have like unused macros. We have crash, kick, clap, the kick top, the cymbal loop in there as well, just percussion. We have the noise, of course, noise sidechain, bass pluck, low pass, bass sidechain, the riser, the automations for the base sends, the routing that we talked about. A lot of these SC, any of the ones that say SC, they stand for sidechain. I'm using them for sidechain for those specific things. So like angry vocals sidechain. Freeza stuff, the break lead, the break bass, little anvil orchestral sound, some back verb for the chords, which I created similarly as well, chord, and I repeated it second time. And yeah, that pretty much shows that there's those extra automations, and then the rest is just very effect heavy with a lot of grouping of effects. So I'm gonna see if I still have my mix down. So let's take a look at the mix down. Hello?
It's unknown numbers.
What is this shit, man?
I got one yesterday, just like how you did that when I was driving.
Scrub ass. Alright, so last but not least, we have the like final mix down, any final adjustments I wanted to do. I found that my angry vocal was too loud, so I made some final adjustments to that. And there wasn't actually much that I adjusted. There was some stuff that needed to be brighter, and that's why you see a lot of this one knob brighter. One knob by Waves is a fantastic tool that can increase the brightness just with one knob. Very, very easy to use tool. But I find that it's not great on like certain things. It's really application dependent. Some stuff is good, some stuff sounds terrible. I had a de-esser on Freeza's vocal because he was just way too sharp. Like his high end was a bit too much, so I wanted to tame it. And then to compensate, I brought up the brightness slightly. Like this isn't what I would normally do. Usually a de-esser has a very quick release, but that's fine. Ultimately, I just had stuff grouped very simply, but still at the end, you know, I also had this on the master. And what I did with this, right before the drop, I made a high pass up to about 120, and then right before the drop came in, I took it down to 0% effect. What that does is that it just makes sure that there's no really low-end sub-bass before the drop to introduce more impact on the drop. You guys can do that. Just a quick high pass, whether you want to use like a fruity VST or anything. Just a quick high pass just before the drop. But that gives you an idea of like what went behind the Golden Freeza track. If you guys liked this video, drop a like. If you found it useful, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys thought, what kind of other project breakdowns you want to see, other type of tutorials, sound design. And make sure you guys are subscribed. I am making content daily, so make sure you hit that notification bell to be alerted of when I create content. And nonetheless, I will see you guys in the next video. Keep making them gains, you know, Dragon Ball Super gains, Dragon Ball Super Saiyan, Super Saiyajin Gold, Goda Rose gains. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.